Welcome to the Actual Astronomy Podcast, episode number 31, Observing Plan for July. So yesterday we actually did, I don't want to call it a special episode because, you know, Shane, any episode I do with you is special.
Oh, I'm touched, but I got to tell you, in the description, I called it a special episode.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I saw, it was exciting because I saw that we actually had, I think at last count, over 30 people listened to it, about 3 dozen people listened to it, I think, in the end in less than 24 hours. So certainly surprised to see that many people download it that quickly. So maybe there's just one person out there that just kept downloading it because something went wrong. But I meant to mention in that one that I was out doing some comet observing 2 mornings ago and 2 or 3 mornings ago. It's getting a little blurry in my mind. And I saw the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn together in the sky as well. And Mars is looking very red. And just having all those planets up with the moon and the comet was just, honestly, it was one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen. It was just extremely beautiful, and it's warm in the summer, so you're not dealing with stuff, and there hasn't been many bugs here anyway. And it's pretty dark and still at 2 a.m. So it was just pretty good. So this will be our Objects to Observe podcast. When we do one of the monthly ones, we do a bit of a brief sketch. We kind of run out just sort of some highlights.
Yeah, I often talk about planetary positions and moon stuff, but not the other fun things to look at.
Yeah, but these months, sort of these deep dive months of May and July and August and September, we do some pretty heavy observing. So
as much as we can, if the conditions are right, meaning cloudless skies and not much wind, and if it's dark, meaning no moon in the sky, we're out somewhere probably observing.
Yeah. And it's finally dark again. I think tomorrow night is when we finally get like a decent amount of dark time, like more than an hour or something like that. And you can actually tell now, like last night, even with the moon up, before the moon fully came up, we did have a brief spell of darkness. So yeah, I think over the next few weeks, I only have 2 or 3 nights where I'm not actually planning to be out observing. So
oh, that's awesome.
If it's cloudy, I won't be out, but if it's clear, I will. And we're trying to plan a couple trips. So hopefully we'll get out because we can pretty much observe from tonight or tomorrow night right through almost until the end of the month. I think the 27th or 28th. So we have a solid 2 weeks here of potentially good skies to observe in. So hopefully we can get out and enjoy some of those.
Yeah, definitely. And even though like true darkness is only an hour and it's a little bit later, last night I was out at 11:30 and I was barely outside of the city. So in light polluted skies, and you can already see the darkness starting to come back. The Milky Way was starting to show itself. And it warmed my heart almost as much as your words at the start of the podcast.
Excellent. And because of this, so because of this and scheduling that, we're gonna record, I think at least 2, maybe 3 episodes today, and maybe we can hop on sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we did the episode yesterday, so we've got lots of episodes coming out. It's just I'm not sure how you're gonna end up staggering them, and so if people notice we end up kind of quote unquote missing one, although we'll be on pace for the number of episodes we plan to do in the run of the month. They might come out at a slightly different pace, just depending, I guess. So people should know that.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Normally we try to release episodes on Mondays and Thursdays, but if you notice that cadence get disrupted, just know that it's because we've been observing and we're maybe a little bit behind in recording or releasing the episode, but we'll continue with it, even if it seems like we're not as frequent as normal.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we get out, like we actually get out and do this stuff. So maybe we can try to hop on somehow, somewhere. Like we don't have very good internet where we go, so I think we're going to end up observing sort of independently. Did talk to Mike yesterday as well, and kind of feel bad about the fact that the place that I picked used to have camping, no longer has camping, and like we got a list of 25 things that we have to do when we go in there to actually stay in the like Airbnb type accommodations. And it's
Oh,
kind of a
wow.
bit of a stripped down kind of like they're not going to have any cushions on the Chesterfield and like some pretty crazy stuff. So, yeah. So,
Sounds fun.
yeah, I know. I was kind of like, I kind of wish I knew about that. So anyway, but it'll be fine, I'm sure. But yeah, and definitely disrupting our plans to actually get together and observe the three of us. But anyway, so how about that comet? Sounds like you got out last night. You said you needed to get another cup of coffee, so that's good news.
Yeah, it was a fantastic night, Chris. And I was not out for very long. So earlier in the day, you and I had chatted, and I asked about where you observe.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about how we live on opposite ends of the
Mm.
city. You're southeast, I'm northwest. Your location is close to you, but, it's probably a 20, maybe even a 30-minute drive, really, for me to get there.
Yeah,
And I
you
have to
could probably
come
get
home.
somewhere pretty darn dark in 30 minutes from your place, like I
Yeah.
could, but opposite directions.
Yeah, so I decided kind of last minute not to go to your location. The problem with that is I really had no idea where I was going because I I hadn't done any pre-scouting or anything like that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know, like from my house, I just kind of get onto this little exchange on the near the highway, and if I keep going north, it's a gravel road. So I just kept driving down it, and I knew that there was kind of there's a little bit of a hill. So I drove past that, and then it turned into nearly a goat's trail where there's no gravel.
Oh yeah.
Had the road been wet, you're not getting out of there. You'd get very stuck.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, but the nice part about that is that, there's not a lot of traffic then down that type of a road.
Yeah.
And I maybe got 5 kilometers out of the city, and there is a kind of a giant berm of dirt in the field that provided like a natural shelter or like light blockage for the city. So I kind of just drove past that.
Oh wow.
I was shielded from a lot of the city light, and so my wife also came with me, as I mentioned
Yeah.
in last episode. And I was slowing down once I passed this berm, and I said, "Whoa, there's the comet!" It just popped out.
Yeah.
It was right there. And my wife saw it immediately too, which that's always a good sign when somebody who doesn't do a lot of observing sees something quickly.
Yeah.
So we jumped out of the vehicle. We started with the 12 by 36 binoculars, and it was incredible. That comet, it's so large. Like well, the nucleus itself is quite small, but the tail, oh my gosh, it takes up a lot of sky. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah.
So we moved from the 12 by 36 binoculars to a little 61 millimeter William Optics refractor that I have. And I put in the 31 millimeter Nagler, which
Hmm.
gives a pretty expansive field of view. Probably in that 5 to 6 degree range is my guess. And again, the view was so nice.
Yeah.
And my wife made an interesting comment because I said, "Wow, I really like the view through the telescope," and she said, "Well, it really doesn't look that different to me." And she was right. Like the actual magnification wasn't that different, but what the telescope does for me, even with the image stabilized binoculars, is just how stable the view is with a telescope on a tripod. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm able to absorb or see more detail, and appreciate the object a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, so then we switched from the 31 millimeter Nagler, and I put in my Leica zoom, which goes from like, I think 17.8 millimeter down to 8.9.
Hmm.
And magnification really didn't help,
No.
at least not to my eye. It was less pleasing. It's far better to take in a rich star field with a comet, um, and be able to see the whole tail and the nucleus and really appreciate it that way.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was fantastic. It was a great view, and I think you got out last night as well.
Yeah, I went out later. To me, it seemed like it had either dimmed down or some of that haze maybe was covering it up or something. Because the I guess more or less like 3 nights ago ish when I was out. It's sort of hard to kind of track on it when you're getting up in the middle of the night. I put it at about first magnitude, or maybe just a smidge better. But last night I would have said it was more like closer to third magnitude. Like I got out of the car and I could barely see it. Whereas the first night when I got out was kind of like your experience, where you hop into the car and you're like, there it is. And there was quite a bit of that high, very thin cloud covering like the moon and other parts of the sky. And I'm guessing maybe some of that had moved in front of it. So if you were saying it was still pretty bright, then that's probably what I was looking through. It was hard to tell, but yeah, definitely it seemed to have dimmed it down quite a bit.
For sure. And I think I can confirm that, because so we went out, we left at about 11 p.m. and reached the observing site probably by about 20 after. But within the like the local astronomy club, a number of members went out last night to observe it and posted their results. And one individual was out from like 10:30 or 11 till 2 or 3 in the morning observing it. And he commented how the first couple of hours, maybe up until midnight, it was pretty good. But then some haze came in and some high level cloud, and it started to dim it and kind of filter out the comet. So certainly that's what happened to you, I think.
Yeah, probably. Like I was looking at dusk, and it just seemed like there was some of that around at that time. So I couldn't find it from my backyard. So I just thought, well, I'll go to sleep for a couple hours. And sometimes, more often than not, I find here anyway, the sky does improve during the overnight hours. So I'm guessing last night it was just unlucky. There was parts of the sky that were really good, but there was definitely parts of the sky that weren't that great. But hey, what'd you think of my $99 telescope with the Prima Luce lab rings on it?
Well, I think, a quarter of one of those rings is worth more than that entire telescope. It looked great. It looks like they're a perfect fit for it, which,
well,
or no?
Not quite. So what the little scope, this little 80 millimeter refractor, has a little mounting plate on it. I think you've seen that. And you can attach a plate to it. I only have like one plate that works with this telescope and my 100 millimeter. And I was reluctant to kind of take the rings off and then bolt it on. It just seems like a lot of rigmarole every time I want to switch across from either the 100 millimeter to the 80. So the 100 millimeter, although it gives a reasonably wide field view, it's not a super wide field telescope. I get it more as a generalist telescope / planetary telescope, as you know. But the 80 is just a wide field telescope, not really much for planets at all. I'm going to be using it at less than 50 power the majority of the time. So I thought, well, I can probably, maybe they'll fit. They didn't quite fit, like screwed down all the way. There was still like quite a bit of play. And so what I ended up doing is taking some like packing material, like some almost like bubble wrap type material, and just kind of encircling the spots where the rings were contacting. And it looks horrendously ugly, but it worked perfectly well. Like it just gave enough of an increase in the tube diameter to give me some pretty good purchase with the rings. So like I observed with it for half an hour or so and had no problems at all. So I think I'm just going to observe with it that way. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's great. That's awesome. Good solution.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be creative to make things work like that.
I think it looked pretty deadly too. Like, I gotta post that photo to Claudia Nights and say, hey, my tube rings came in from my ST80. I bought these just for it.
Yeah. Funny.
So yeah, and I spent a little bit of time just kind of looking at some stars and star testing it. Like, by the way, thanks so much, because this little 80 millimeter scope worked phenomenally better after you definitely took a pretty big crack at like blackening the edges and doing some of the other work that you did to get that pinch optic out of the equation. So you mentioned that there was some alignment or collimation issue. And definitely, yeah, I saw that. I thought it was pretty minimal, though. I thought it was in the sort of generally accepted realm of normalcy for a telescope that costs just $1 less than $100. So
yeah, for the price, you certainly can't expect perfection necessarily, but I'm happy to hear that it's better than what it was before. That's because that honestly, that job took probably all of 10 or 15 minutes.
You're not
So,
supposed to tell me that. I was gonna get you like a goodly amount of non-gluten free beer. So
whoa, the real beer. No, it was really a simple job. So,
yeah,
if anybody wants to purchase one of those telescopes, and if they run into the same problem, my message would be don't be afraid to take it apart and loosen that retainer ring because it really was no trouble at all.
yeah, yeah, definitely worked a lot better. I want to now just take a bit of the flocking paper and flock the dew shield because I was getting quite a bit of scatter. I was trying to look at
Oh,
Mars and the moon, and it was a pretty big mess around that. So I think that's sort of the last thing I'll do. And yeah, it looks pretty deadly with the 2-inch focuser, which again cost about 25 or 30% more than the telescope, and the Prima Luce rings, which cost 2 or 3 times the telescope, and then the bit of work that you did. And then I had to do the star test, of course, with my Noblex 12.5 millimeter 4 degree, which is the most expensive eyepiece I own. So, it's really nice to see it properly dressed out in in about I don't know 100 times the amount of the cost of the original optics, so or whatever. It
that's
was
hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. But I mean, those little ST80 type telescopes. This is a Meade Adventure Scope, it's called, and I just ordered it on Amazon. I think for us in Canada, it's like around 129 or something. But it comes with all this junk, and unfortunately, it does come with all this junk. It's hard to get it without the junk. A lot of throwaway stuff, but anyhow, that the optic in it is pretty decent once you back the retaining ring off and get that pinched optic taken care of, like you were kind enough to do for me. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And I used my lowest power, my 30 millimeter, which gives me just over 5 degrees. And then one of the reasons why I had originally purchased this really inexpensive telescope and then put all this work into it, putting a new focuser on and everything, although at some expense, is that it's sort of like the cheapest way to get this really wide field in an 80 millimeter telescope. And the
Yeah,
views are really nice. Go ahead.
you really can't beat the price for that field of view.
Mm,
You won't find anything better, and it's an interesting study, or like real kind of light, like I can't talk today, real live study that you've done here. We've spent a lot of money on individual telescopes in the past, and then you buy one that's very inexpensive. And I think it's pretty fair to say that the cost difference between the $99 telescope and say a $2,000 telescope, the cost difference doesn't equal the performance difference.
no, not at all. Not at
The
all.
$2,000 telescope will perform better, but not to the level that you're paying. So, the if all you can afford is $100 telescope, go ahead and buy it. You're probably going to love it and actually have a pretty darn good telescope.
Well, I think these ST80 type telescopes are like, if somebody is on an extremely tight budget and, like you said, can kind of take a bit of a crack at things. Replacing the focuser was super super easy, and I think they run for about $129 American, or something like that, for a good focuser. I got mine from Gina Astro. I think it was a Gina Astro. No, possibly. Yeah, no, it was a Gina Astra, I think. Anyway, look for the one with two set screws to hold your diagonal, though. There's several models of replacement focusers for the ST80. And so, maybe really quick, I refer to it as an ST80. It used to be called the ST80 from Orion Telescope and Binocular, and this is an 80 millimeter refractor that's a focal ratio of f5, or 400 millimeter focal length. And it's subsequently been produced by a variety of manufacturers, from Skywatcher to Meade to Celestron to a whole pile of different manufacturers. But they come with a pretty crummy focuser, and it doesn't take 2-inch eyepieces. And this telescope really excels when you use very low power 2-inch eyepieces. That's really what its forte is. So you kind of want to pop that focuser off, put the new one on. And then the other thing, unfortunately, that for whatever reason they do with it, I think for maybe shipping purposes or whatever, is they really jam the lenses into it, and there's this ring at the top, and you need to take the dew shield off. It just slides off, and then you need to back that ring off and give the telescope a good knock, and then just kind of very lightly secure the optic to get it really to perform. But you even like darken the edge for me, I think, and that definitely it definitely seemed like it had a lot better contrast too. So
Oh, that's great. That's really great. Yeah, I'm just looking at it online. The one that you have is the Meade Adventure Scope 80.
yeah,
$130 Canadian, comes with
yeah,
eyepieces, tripod, diagonal, backpack,
and
finder.
all that stuff is, in my opinion, worthless.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
very good.
Even the backpack I thought might be useful. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Um, but the scope itself is pretty decent once you do this little bit of work to it. And there's like online tutorials you can look up, like ST80 modifications and blah blah blah, and you'll find people have done all kinds of crazy stuff to them. But I think the main things are replace the focuser and get the optics properly properly positioned in the tube. So for the sake of maybe another $100 or $150 American, you can get a really really good little telescope. Then of course you need to mount it up on something. So I'm just using a $150 Universal Astronomics Dwarf Star, which is perfect for it. And I think Larry might still make them over at Universal Astronomics, but I think there's a variety of suppliers of small LDAS mounts now, and certainly it will go on just about anyone, because it's only, I think, a 5-pound telescope once you put a plate on it. So it's pretty easy. And then really, I don't think there's much that beats it for low power wide field. I think it gives you the optimal wide field and pretty decent optics for in the end, I guess, looking at maybe $200 ish, maybe 250 American, something like that. But
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think that's absolutely the cheapest telescope that you can go with, and then get some decent views.
Yeah, and I think it would even ride quite well on like a photographic tripod with a fluid head mount, or a ball, like a fluid head. Yeah, I guess mount is the right word. I think those could handle it quite well, and
Yeah, I
you'd
think
learn
so.
an
I
awful
think
lot.
like there's a little plate on the bottom. You can even probably screw one of those, so you could definitely get going with it. I think the big thing that was to put a proper focuser on it, and then get those optics taken care of. But yeah, I'm just using it. Like I put that a universal mount on Universal Astronomics mount on my Manfrotto, and it's just like the smallest photographic Manfrotto that will go up to 5 or 6 feet. So I'm definitely on a very very lightweight photographic only tripod, and it was perfect. Like I wouldn't even want anything else. Super portable setup, and yeah, works really well. Yeah. So
That's
got
good
a
to hear.
got a few other things going on this month. Shane, we'll just kind of run through it really really quick. So Venus has just passed greatest illumination. So I guess you weren't out late enough. I think Venus was just starting to rise when I was heading home at 2 whatever in the morning.
Yeah, I missed Venus and Mars. Saturn and Jupiter were perfectly positioned for some observing, but with the little 61 millimeter, I didn't bother looking at them.
Yeah, and Pallas, it's at opposition tomorrow night.
Hmm.
So that's an asteroid. If people are interested, they can put that into their software. If you look it up, you can find online. But you mentioned Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter is at opposition. That means it's basically at its closest point to Earth, and will be brighter than any other time during the year. So July 14th, that's when you can best see it. I was actually looking at it last night with a pair of 7x50s, and had no problem pulling the moons out just with my 7x50. So I was pretty happy with that. That was pretty fun. And then Saturn is going to be at opposition on the 20th. So I do plan on observing those, but I'll probably be away on those nights observing it. I guess well one of those nights anyway.
Are you using any filters when you look at Saturn and, well, Jupiter more so, I guess?
Well, I'm going to try that contrast filter that you recommended, and I picked up a few months ago.
Yeah.
But that's probably about it. I have a light blue filter I enjoy using on Jupiter. I think light blue is a nice filter. So
There was a good article or a good thread recently on cloudy nights in the Eyepieces forum. Bill Paolini, I think is how you say his last name,
mhm.
did a little planetary filter shootout.
Hmm.
He observed the primary planets for I think about 30 days on multiple nights, and he went back and forth with all sorts of filters, including some like very inexpensive photographic gel filters. And like the results that he had that repeated multiple nights was that the Bader contrast booster was the best filter.
Oh.
His second favorite filter on basically all of the planets, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
Mhm.
The one that he liked the best was the Bader contrast booster with one of these gel filters stacked on top of it. And I
Okay.
can't remember. I want to say it was a violet one, but I might be wrong. So for
Okay.
those that are interested in some planetary filters, maybe check out that thread. I'll see if I can tweet it out actually.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'd be cool.
it's an interesting read, and Bill, what I appreciate about his testing that he does is he's very methodical, and he
Yeah.
really puts whatever he's testing it, he really puts it through the ringer to make sure that he's done the proper analysis, and I always enjoy reading his results.
He's actually got a book out. I keep meaning to pick it up. It's not inexpensive, but I'm guessing it would be pretty good. And that is, I believe the title is something like "Choosing and Using Astronomical Eyepieces." It's part of the Springer Amateur Astronomy. Believe maybe even the Patrick Moore series through Springer Press. It's one of those ones. But I think when I last looked, it was Canadian like 67. And I've already got lots of eyepieces, and I think it'd be awesome if somebody was really looking into getting some more eyepieces or at an earlier stage. It's just hard for me to justify a book on picking out eyepieces when I pretty much have my eyepieces right now. There's a couple I would like. So anyhow, maybe somebody can pick that up and let us know.
Yeah, that's a book that's been on my list, and similar. Like, I don't really need any new eyepieces, but I do appreciate reading a little bit about the history of some of the eyepieces that were developed, and he puts in his thoughts too.
Yeah.
Of what he thinks of some of these eyepieces, which again, I really appreciate Bill's insight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Exactly. New moon is on the 20th. That's when it's very close to the sun, so therefore it's not visible in the nighttime sky, and makes for some really good dark skies, and makes the nebula and star clusters from the summer Milky Way really pop. So looking forward to the new moon weekend coming up. Should be pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
And Mercury on the 22nd will be at greatest western elongation. So it's going to be best to take a look at Mercury while it's high in the morning sky before sunrise kind of impedes on it. So kind of hope to take a look at some of those. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but picked Scorpius as my feature constellation this summer. So here in the next few days before these observing sessions we're looking forward to, I'll get you and others a list of
Hmm.
weird and wonderful objects you can observe there. So
That's outstanding because I have some Scorpius stuff on my list for this summer, actually.
yeah, I sort of have an intimate relationship with the scorpion.
Oh,
So
oh yeah, weren't you stung by
I
one?
was stung by a scorpion when I was sleeping in the bottom of a wine, or not a wine press, an old olive press that had been turned into an Airbnb 7 or 8 years ago in the Tuscan hillside. And woke up one night to this very, very sharp, painful, I guess like hornet/wasp type sting on my foot. Couldn't find anything, looked everywhere, figured I was, you know, just imagining things. But my foot really hurt. So I sat upstairs for like an hour, and after an hour or so, like it stopped throbbing and didn't seem to have any other ill effects, and just kind of chalked it up to, a vivid imagination, and maybe like, I don't know, like somehow moving my foot a certain way or catching it on my other foot or something like that in my sleep. And then when I woke up in the morning, there was this giant scorpion on the wall next to the bed. So kind of putting, maybe it didn't sting me, but it kind of felt like what maybe a scorpion sting would look like or feel like. And then to wake up the next day and then find a scorpion right there beside me seemed to indicate to me that perhaps indeed I did get stung by a scorpion.
Well, now you have a special connection with the sky and that constellation.
So there's a tale of two scorpions.
Yes.
All right. So what are you planning to maybe take a look at here, Shane? Like, I think you're maybe getting your plans together. So that's my plan. I'm going to be making up a list and doing some scorpion or Scorpius observing. And you were saying maybe you have a few objects down in the lower reaches of the southern Milky Way seen from Canada too.
Yeah. So as you know, Chris, a couple years ago, I kind of happened across an old Teleview refractor, Teleview Genesis, SDF Genesis. So it's the precursor to their NP 101. It was produced in the mid 90s. It's a 101 millimeter apochromatic refractor.
Well, you are struggling today. You got to staying up more.
I know. You think as an astronomer, I'd be a little more used to being tired and trying to operate. But anyway, this telescope is in outstanding condition. They're known for their wide field and very flat field views. Now, what's kind of also intriguing about this telescope is one of our favorite observers, Stephen James O'Meara, wrote a number of books observing various objects with pretty much the exact same telescope.
Yeah, I think we mentioned some of those in our what to do on cloudy nights when we were suffering from the never-ending stream of cloud and wind there in June.
Yeah. So the one that intrigues me the most is the Hidden Treasures book, because that entire book was observed with basically the exact same telescope. Stephen observed from, I think, primarily all of those objects from Hawaii, where he lives. And I started reading the book. And I'm fascinated by his writing style and his observing skills. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to read this the way I would normally read a book, which is you pick it up, you start on page 1, and you finish the book. Yeah. We've talked about how we don't like to necessarily have an idea of what an object should look like prior to observing it. And I felt like if I read this book, it might skew my experience at the eyepiece. I might start convincing myself I'm seeing things that maybe I'm not actually seeing. So what my plan is I want to observe all of these objects that Stephen wrote about in Hidden Treasures using the same telescope. I want to record my detailed observing notes at the eyepiece. And then after the fact, I want to go and read about his observation of that object. And just see what he saw, see what I saw. Certainly, I'm not claiming to be anywhere near the observer he is, so I'm sure his detail and what he saw is probably going to be greater than mine. But I'm also sort of curious about his sky versus the grassland sky, where you and I like to observe, because I believe that our grassland sky is second to none, or at the very least, it's on equal to some of the great sites in the world. So anyway, I think it's kind of a neat little project, given some of the variables are constant, with the telescope and some of the eyepieces. So because it's summer, I want to tackle the Sagittarius objects as well as the Scorpius objects. So on that list, there's 4 Scorpius, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Sagittarius objects. So if we are able to get to grasslands this coming weekend, well, I know you're committed 100%. I'm still, if the weather's great, I'll be there. If the weather is not good, I probably won't be there. But nailing or being able to observe 10 objects over 2 nights should not be a problem. So that is the goal for this coming weekend.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe what we should do is we kind of spent some pretty good time talking about a variety of different things. Maybe we'll come back here in a few minutes and do episode 32 and talk a little bit more about our preparation for observing in the grasslands and other dark sky adventures this summer.
Let's do it.
All right. Great chatting with you, Shane.
And you, and thanks everybody for listening.